Hello class, this is Mr. Hart, and in this video I want to talk about image processing, which is this very cool combination of mathematics and computer science and photography. And I bring this up because it's near and dear to my heart because this is currently what I'm researching in my program. A lot of you know that I've been working on my doctorate degree while I've been teaching at the high school. And so I just wanted to bring up some of the things I've been working on so you can understand what modern computer scientists in this field research and do. So before we get into that, let's talk about what image processing actually is. And the easiest way to think about it is just to open up a regular Photoshop type program. So for example, I have a program called Acorn opened up on my computer that works very similar to Photoshop. You bring in an image and you can do all sorts of things to it. But if you think about it, this computer doesn't really know that this is an image of Isaac Newton. It just knows it's a set of pixels and numbers that it puts together in some specific order and displays, and then we see it as Isaac Newton, but it has no idea what this is. And so image processing is the field of trying to manipulate this image in a way that is meaningful to us. So for example, if I just select this area and delete it, what I've done to the image, according to the computer, is simply selected this area and set it all to 0 to make it disappear. But we know that that essentially is cutting out a section of the image. I could also fill that in with a color, which is the same as giving it a certain value, but we know that's basically painting this area with that specific color. That's a very simple modification. If you know more Photoshop tools, you know things like the stamp tool and brush strokes and gradients and magic wand, etc. You can even do more interesting things though, such as with filters. So we can do something like a box blur. And this is essentially just blurring the image by a certain amount. Now to the computer, again, we're just doing a special mathematical calculation where we're averaging nearby pixel values, but to us it looks like we're getting a blurrier image. Another one we can do is we can do color adjustments with color curves and other things like that. So if you're familiar with photography, you may have taken a class on Lightroom or Photoshop, and you know adjusting these curves adjusts the different brightnesses and contrasts of the image. Now again, to us, we're seeing the image getting brighter and darker, but really the computer is just crunching some numbers, taking certain color values and changing them to something else to make the image different. Last of all, just one that I think is interesting is something like this with a glass distortion, right? We see that and it looks like we're looking at Isaac Newton through some foggy, glassy mug or something like that, which is really cool. But in order to do this, the computer needs to know something about what we care about, where the edges are in the image, what the hair looks like. It has to have some indication and understanding of what it's actually seeing in order to do this properly. So image processing, you'll often hear it combined with the word computer vision, and they both kind of mean this idea of how do we manipulate an image and teach a computer about an image so that it can do something meaningful with it in a way that we want to use it, or a way that we want to change the image or make it something more interesting. Okay, so that's just kind of an introduction of what image processing is. Just think of basically anything you can do in Photoshop is some mathematical calculation on the numbers in the image to make it more interesting to us. So my work has to do with image processing, but it's also a very specific field of image processing, and it deals with a specific type of camera. And that camera is what we know as a light-filled camera, or what makes light-filled images. To understand how this works, you need to understand how these cameras are built, because otherwise this just looks like a bunch of pictures of the same thing. But in reality, it's not just a picture of this bird, it's actually multiple views of this bird taken from slightly different angles. Okay, it's like if you had taken a regular camera and snapped a picture at every different spot around the bird to get multiple views of the same bird. Okay, what you're doing with this special type of camera, if you remember when we talked about regular cameras, the light comes in, it deflects off the lens, and it makes an image on that back part of the sensor. But with a light field camera, what you do is you add an extra step where you add a set of lenses on that back side And so now as the light comes in, it re-splits the light at that back sensor. And the reason you want to do that is now you can know the different angles that the light came in. And when you combine all that information together, you get an image that looks like this, where it's each image at a different view. Now this is kind of hard to see, so let me play an actual video of it so you can get a better indication of what it's doing. So this little video shows each individual view of this picture of a swan. When it was taken with a light field, you'll notice that we can pan back and forth as it moves from view to view, and we get this sense of depth and geometry that is present when you have the light field camera image taken. Okay, so my work has to do specifically with light field images. How do we do image processing when we're dealing with a light field? Now you may be wondering, why do we care? Why do we want to use light field cameras? Well, Google just recently bought a light field camera company. That may be of interest to you. And if you think about it, a lot of phones nowadays actually have multiple cameras on the back. Some cameras actually have split lenses in them, so they do a smaller version of a light field. And the reason they want to do this is because if you use a light field camera and you take an image, one of the main things you can do is you can refocus your image after you've taken it. Now, we've all had our camera moving and had motion blur, or the focus wasn't quite in the right spot. And when we take the image, somebody's out of focus. We have that family photo that didn't quite work. But with a light field camera, you can go back and change this. So this image of the swan, we can move our focus forward digitally, mathematically move it forward without changing the camera settings, and make it so the swan in front is in focus and the swan in back is blurred. Or we can do vice versa and make it so the swan in front is blurred and the swan in back is in focus. And we can even make combination photos where both of them are in focus. So you can do all sorts of things with a light field camera because you have this extra information. You can calculate depth. You can do all sorts of cool portrait effects. Portrait mode on iPhone and Android phones is often using light field technology to make that really strong in focus front object, the person you're taking the picture of, and then the really blurry background behind it. So what we want to do with our light field images is we want to see if we could do style transfer on them. That's an example of image processing. Now, if you haven't seen style transfer before, what it does is it takes a particular photo and it takes a particular painting, and it's this process of teaching the computer how to make this photograph look like it was painted in this style. And when you feed it through a special network, a deep learning network in AI, and this is one of the big advancements of AI, is it can actually teach the computer how to make it look like a painting, which is really cool. It can take regular photographs and turn it into a painting. If you want a good example of this, I recommend going to deepart.io and looking at their latest artworks. And this is a really cool site where you can give it a photo, give it a style, and it will take some time and actually process that photo in that style. There's all sorts of cool examples with different photos, different styles. And this is just with style transfer. It's relatively new as of the time of recording. It's been about 3 or 4 years old, but pretty recent stuff. And so you can make all sorts of amazing paintings by taking a photo and another painting and getting a new style. Okay? Anywho, so we wanted to see if we could do this with light fields. And the result is that we could. Okay, so here's my end result of stylizing a light field image with a specific painting. Here's that swan light field we were looking at before, and this is the painting we're styling it after. And so we get this really cool effect in the light field image. Now, this wasn't as easy as it looks. I'm kind of giving you the punchline here, but it took a lot of work getting there. Because, for example, if I just took each individual view of light field and fed it through a network, you get this bad flickering effect because each view of the light field stylizes just a little bit differently than every other view of the light field. So if you don't do anything, you get a really inconsistent image. And so what our job was, and the research we worked on, was seeing if we can make this process work for the entire light field and keep it consistent. Basically what we had to do is we had to take our light field image, we'd feed it through the stylization transfer network, and you would get some inconsistent set of light field images. But then you would take the central view and you could actually warp it to match spatially the different locations of the light field. So we're kind of warping and blending this image until we had a consistent view that is missing things because of occlusion and stuff. But then we'd optimize those together and we get a new light field image. So I'm breezing over lots and lots of technical stuff here, but the result is that we can actually continue this optimization process for a light field image so that all the views stay consistent with each other. And so we again get amazing results where it's nice and consistent, not the flickering we were seeing before. You can do it with any painting and any light field image. So this one's pretty cool. We can see the colors of the reflections on the water, for example. And again, any light field image that you take, we can make consistent. So it was just a really fun project. But the most important thing of all, and the coolest thing of all, is that we maintain the light field properties that we were expecting. So that light field image still can refocus. So here's an example of a light field image of a bike rack. And we can take that light field image and we can bring it near focus. So the handlebar in front is in focus. And then we can move it to far focus so that the handlebars in back and this pole are in focus. But we can do that with the stylized light field as well. So we can make this painting go in and out of focus. And that was the main result we were looking for. We can stylize a light field and maintain these properties, which is just amazing to me. And it's really fun that we get to see this end result on this project. Anyways, I just wanted to show you guys a little bit of what I was working on, introduce you to some ideas with light fields and image processing, and show you that there's still amazing things happening every day with computers and optics and just the field of science. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it inspires you to go out there and do something more with what you learn, and thank you for watching.